Good evening, folks. Hello, everyone. This is Super Galaxy Sam here, and I forgot my little funny avatar, so let me throw that up. Um, yeah, this is outside my usual stream times when I do stream, but I said I tried doing a early morning stream at some point, so finally I am. Because my sleep schedule is all fucked up now. I literally go to bed at like 10 p.m. or something like that, and I wake up at like 2 or 3, and then it's hard for me to sleep till like the afternoon, and even then now I can't sleep in the afternoon. I get my 8 hours of sleep like early fucking night. So it's weird. It's a weird mess, and that's just how it is. So anyhow, we are gonna be streaming IDV today until probably when it's time for me to go to work. So that's my plan, and I'm gonna try getting some dice in. I want to get some dice as it's kind of the closing week of the season, and also because I'm trying to furnish my room. If anyone who's been following this channel for a while knows, this room used to be just barren, just a liminal space. So I'm trying to decorate it this time. Finally, after all these years, it's getting decorated. So I'm trying to get it to look like it's not a chaotic mess. It actually looks like an apartment. So yeah, and also thank you to Axiero for the follow. Thank you so much. And with that said, let's get started. I don't want to play duos. All the other game modes won't open till like, I don't know, what, 6 a.m. for me? It's usually something like 6 or 7 a.m. So we got a couple hours to go. Interesting. Quite, what a picture. And also I am using my old mic today. I didn't feel like unpacking my other one. I just was lazy. Just felt a little lazy today, so... That is just the case. And since this is quick match, I can try out different hunters. The birds are up because I'm up, so if you hear them, that's why. Come here, baby. Baby birds. Hold gently like hamburger. Okay. I love messing with survivors as gamekeeper. Just by placing traps in areas that they don't really expect. I'm just gonna say it's fun messing with them. I'm not the best with gamekeeper, but I just like messing with people when playing as him. Oh boy, gonna go up here. Did I place it in the wrong area? I must have. I did place it there, though, didn't I? Unless they, like, made changes. I don't fucking know. Fuck. Why did I choose to chase while Odina's gamekeep? This was not a bright idea. Fuck off. Oh well, it's practice, so I'll just chalk it up to that. I had some good ranked matches earlier. Out of I think 5 of the matches I played as Hellember, I won. I like got 1 3K and then 3 4Ks and 1 loss. No, it was like there was 1 tie. Yeah, I can't remember if it was 5 or 6, but I think it was 5. Anyways, I basically had some good matches today as Hellember, and also I am so glad that they are making adjustments to him. He really needs them. They're not the best adjustments in the world, I will say that. Like, there's some more stuff that I would have preferred they did with him, but I will take it. They at least made it so his phantom isn't insufferable. Because the phantom AI was just awful. It really was. It needed to be updated so bad. So I'm glad they made it now where you can actually actively select who to target, which was what was badly needed. And I don't exactly mind too much the oh, okay, that's fine. I don't exactly mind too much the shortening of how long the Phantom stays out in a match, because the way I use Phantoms is it's more for prevention and chase. Or not prevention, but like discouragement and chase. Pressuring. So I don't usually have them out that much. I only like have them out when I need them. Because once you have your puppets out, you pretty much don't rely as on the Phantom as heavily if you're good at playing Hellember. Real quick, let me take a piss. Can I take a piss? I guess not. That's fine, I guess. I'll just take a piss afterwards. Meow meow time. Let's meow meow. I am gonna try learning some Disciple gameplay. Because I've been recommended to learn Disciple. There we go. Snare. Yeah, your dog. Where the fuck? I haven't taken my medication yet. So I actually can't even remember where the hell she went. God damn it. I keep forgetting to fucking split the cats. Damn it. Come here, bitch. There we go, we got you. Alright. Three. I'll take it. Good enough for me. Alright, so let's see here. Hello. Yeah, no. Bye. That's a no. No for me. God damn it, the Sans Undertale. Alright, so let's see here. They're probably all the way over there. Yep, they are. They fucking are. Okay, go. Go get them. Go get them, pussies. Okay. So how many logic pieces do I need to get the furniture I want? Because I want to get stuff that makes it look like an actual apartment. So this includes a bathroom, kitchen, bedroom. So I'm gonna filter through this. So the sink's like 1088. Stove is 1088. Then A tier stuff. So I want the bed and this panel because since it's like just one space with an upstairs and a downstairs, so no extra rooms. I want to like at least divide it up somewhat, so it seems like it's a space someone lives in, and isn't like, oh yeah, I just kind of, you know, I kind of don't have everything broken up. That doesn't make sense, but it makes sense to me. Why are they cursing? Oh, never mind. You're speaking a different language that isn't Spanish. When I saw the Naga, I was like, I probably shouldn't say that because I don't even know what it means. But you get the idea. So I have chickens. For those still watching. Hello, Jesse. How are you? Yes, I'm up very early. How are you on this fine morning? One of my hens likes to hog up the entire bed. And she, like, forces everyone else off of it. That's good to hear. Glad to see you're doing good. Glad to see that you're doing fine this evening. Alright. There we go, got you. Casually watched you during school. Oh shit. That's cool. Also, welcome to the stream, Pack-a-Punch. How are you? And yeah, you're early. Yep. It's because I wanted to do a stream that's more accessible to, like, non-Americans. Because of time zones being a thing. It's class 1. Oh, that's cool. I'm doing good. I get to go back to work today, and I'm actually excited for that. Because I don't work during the summer. So now with summer's over, I finally get to return to work. Glad to see that you're doing good. I get to return to Oh, I know that feeling. I know. I'm out of school, but that is a huge relatable feeling. That was me whenever I was like, I'm gotta go back to school. The one downside of not being in school anymore is you end up kind of having to figure out what you want to do with your time. Because now you have all the free time in the world to kind of just do whatever, besides work.
We are sending you some back to school.
No! Oh no. No, don't send me back to school. Not like this. Yes! No! To be fair, though, I have taken adult classes, occasionally. Because the beauty of not being required to go to school is when you do want to go to school, you actually go by your own choice. And you're not limited to taking multiple classes. You can just take as many classes as you want for whatever subject. As long as it's available to you. Send Sam to school? No! Don't send me to school! No! See? No! No! No!
I'll drag you to adult school.
God damn it. Anything but that. The only valid school I'll go to is Rhino Credentia School. Take me to Nosemouse School. You know you want to. Go, young person. Man. Either drag you or carry you, god damn it. I would not. Okay, I would not as an adult. As an adult, I would honestly not mind if there was a class you could take optionally that, you know, just teaches you how to adult life 101. That would be nice.
We are sending you back to a school in Brazil.
No! Don't send me to Brazil! Oh no! But what if I want to go to Brazil? What then? It's Ohio! No! Listen, there's a reason. I think is it Ohio that keeps producing astronauts? There's a reason why astronauts leave Ohio. There's something about that place that makes people go, damn, I want to go to space. There's something about the Midwest that makes people go, I think I will commit my life to becoming an astronaut. Have you seen the memes? Yes, I have. I have indeed seen the memes. I am not 100% up to date with current memes, but I do know about the Ohio meme, and I know about Skibidi Toilet. Actually, can I just say, the one thing that amuses me about the whole Skibidi Toilet meme is it's just a remix of older memes. Like, I remember hearing that, like, Skibidi song as a teenager. And also, Gmod. Gmod, just Gmod. So, you know, just seeing it all kind of come back full force is like, well, looks like my teenage years have been remixed for the next generation.
Sam is a boomer.
No! I'm not a boomer, I swear. I'm actually a millennial? Millennial? I'm on the cusp of Gen Z and millennialism. 95 kid here. I'm part of the group that has existential crisis. Yeah, I'm older than most people. It's actually been that way ever since I was a child. Most people around my age end up being younger than me. The only time that wasn't the case was when I was part of an IDV group. That's basically it. and maybe some occasional college classes, but it was super rare. You're like 30. No, I'm not 30 yet. You're off. You're off by 3 years. Technically 2, because I'll be 28 this year. So yeah, I'm getting old. I started this channel when I was like fucking 25? No, I started it when I was 24. Jesus Christ. Yeah, 2-ish years. And I'm one of those funky cases where I sound and look really young, but I am actually, in fact, much closer to 30 than people think. I have a whole Joseph Desaulniers thing kind of going on. It's why I'm kind of like allow people to make old like peapod jokes with me. Of course, in moderation. There's some where I'm like, yeah, no, that's going a little too far there, guys. But in moderation, I'm like, yeah, I will openly make and allow people to make peapod jokes. Correct. To put it this way for people, in regards to in relationship to the characters of this game, I am more closer in age to like characters like Hellumber and present day Orpheus and Freddie Riley than I am to like Postman and Aesop, who are like 21. So I'm that old. I'm old enough where when people make jokes about Almond Cookie being old, or any of the 30-year-old characters in this game being old, I'm like, guys, they're not that old, I swear. Because with for those who don't know, there's a game called Cookie Run Kingdom that I do plan on trying to figure out how to stream, and it has a character named Almond Cookie that apparently their community jokes is like Peapod old, but in reality he just looks very old because he's constantly stressed, and he's only like 32, something like that. So when I found out, I was like, he's not that old. Emperor Joe. Oh, nice. If you do it, definitely feel free to share it to the server. Oh, I see someone over there. I would, but it's not PG. Oh. Okay. Yeah, I don't know the character. I would have to look up to see the have a reference image. But if it's not PG, that's understandable. No, something I've noticed a lot of journalist players flub up on is they don't direct the child. They constantly just kind of yay, and then wonder why it's going the wrong way. It's because you just randomly allowed it to do whatever it wants. You gotta direct it in order for it to work out. Come here. Oy vey. I know you want to. I know you want to. Come here. Come here, come here, come here. Wait. Fine. Journalist got up, so I'm just gonna go after her. Speaking of cosplays, I am working. I'm still slowly waiting to continue working on my Night Watch cosplay, but I am also working on. I have my hand for Jose Baden almost done. I just need to order some more foam clay and get that finished. So I'll eventually have the one very key part of Jose's design finished, so I can, like, you know, cosplay him casually or actually cosplay his original design. So that's cool. I am pretty satisfied with that. So I'll have technically one cosplay sort of done. Because then the rest is just makeup and clothing. Anyone? Alright. There we go, got you. Oh. I'm gonna put you over here now. Alright. Now it's one merch. Maybe over there.
Number 15.
Burger King foot lettuce. The last thing you want on your burger.
King burger is someone's foot fungus. And as it turns out, that might be what you get. A 4chaner uploaded a photo anonymously to the site showcasing his feet in a plastic bin of lettuce with the statement, "This is the lettuce you eat at Burger King." Admittedly, he had shoes on, but that's even worse. The post went live at 11:38 p.m. on July 16, and a mere 20 minutes later, the Burger King in question was alerted to the rogue employee. At least, I hope he's rogue. How did it
Thanks
happen?
to you, I'm seeing more people use that meme. What? Oh, if that's, oh my god.
Somewhere in Mayfield Heights, Ohio. This was at 11:47.
Oh my gosh.
3 minutes later, at 11:50.
Also, I think you might have missed it, but earlier, like twice on stream, the first 4 notes of Megalovania just played, and it was like, god damn it.
Another 4chaner. And 3 minutes later, at 11:58, a link was posted. BK's Tell Us About Us online forum. The foot photo, otherwise known as
Actually, I'm gonna play some JoJo. Golden Wind.
When questioned, the breakfast chef manager said, "Oh, I know who that is. He's getting fired. Mystery solved by 4chan. Now we can all go back to eating our fast food in peace."
Yep. Forgot how. Yeah, it's a very long meme. It's exactly why I make it so people can't spam it. I see you pulled out the finger. The finger's right there. Who's gonna yank it? Eventually, someone will yank the finger. It's only a matter of time. I have to walk my ass all the way over there. This is why a lot of JoJo mains don't like Lakeside. So fucking huge of a map that once you try getting shit done, it's like, I was a crazy bastard to like actually want to play on this map. Back in the day, I would be like, oh yeah, I can play Lakeside as JoJo. No problem. No, I haven't played him in a while, so I'm kind of like, I kind of struggle with Lakeside. But with enough practice, I can do it. Pointing at the dinosaur, you're pointing at him? Why, yes, that is me. I'm the dino. I'm the dinosaur. I'm the old man. priestess has to be around here somewhere. Ah, there you are. I'm not really interested in, Painter. Simply because he just takes forever to chair, so it's better to just let him suffer. Let him suffer. Let him die. Let him die. What is it? Let him die. Let him die. Let him travel up and die from the Lorax. Plus, priestess is more of a nuisance, so. Oof. That pallid slam. Let's see here. No offense to Painter, I was just saying that because, yeah, but you know, that's kind of what happens with Painter. He's the new Let Him Perish character ever since Aesop got his rework. Okay, I gotta change directions. God damn it! Fuck! That caught me off guard. There's usually someone here. God damn it. Also, the Skelly's green accessory. Oh my god, I am such an art graduate that I fucking know what it references. For those who don't know, Painter's accessory that turns his ability green. It's in reference to how artists around his period, his time period, would use colors like Skelly's green, which was an actual color, and it was created from very toxic pigments, like malachite, if I remember right. Actually, no, it wasn't malachite. It was some other mineral, but basically, it was a very, very poisonous chemical, and it made a lot of artists sick. The current versions of those colors we have today are mock imitations of them. They're replications. So we actually don't have as so we have them technically, but they're not as vibrant as the originals. There's been YouTube videos done by artists who managed to get their hands on the original pigments or close to or replicas that are very close to the originals, that and then compare them with the current, like, everyday manufactured kind you can get at the store. And there's definitely, like, a difference. Like, we used to have pigments made from things like mummies, like actual human mummies, used to be used as a pigmentation for forgot the name of the color, but it was a brown. It was like mummy brown or something like that. But yeah, I know we used to use mummies, we used to use malachite, which is a poisonous mineral. And some others. I can't remember if we've ever used uranium. We might have. But those are all colors that used to be found in paints. And now aren't anymore, but we have replications. With the mummy one, it was because it's made from mummies. That
I am the poison.
I am the poison. God damn it. This... With the mummies, it was kind of obvious. It should be kind of obvious why. It's because, well, it's made from dead humans. And more specifically, mummified dead humans. There's not a lot of those. Because they were specifically made from Egyptian mummies, like pharaohs and all of that. So, yeah. There's kind of a bit of an issue there. Both ethically and just, like, resource-wise alone. I think we've also used mercury for painting too. So, to put it simply, the time period when Edgar would theoretically be around, people like him were using a lot of toxic paints. And a lot of artists just would get very sick, or they would like physically ill, or they would like end up developing mental issues. Because if you don't know what mercury does and other chemicals we've used in human history do, they fuck up your brain. So that's why we don't use them anymore. At least, you know, in everyday usage. Yep, toxic. With the taste of your lips, I'm on a ride. You're toxic, slipping up. With the taste of a poison paradise. Fuck. Don't you know that I'm toxic? Yeah, I'm poison to you. Don't you know that I'm toxic? I think, if I remember right, I think this year we're gonna find out what happens to Edgar in the matches, possibly. Because there seems to be a pattern with the letters where, like, letter 1 gives some information about them as, like, a test subject. Letter 2 gives some general information about them, or, like, something of that sort. Letter 3 is, like, further information on the experiment or conclusion, and letter 4 is kind of like, fuck whatever. Just fuck all. Literally, Magician's Letter wasn't about magician at all. It was about, like, Explorer instead, and this bard dude. I'm like, what? taste of your lips, I'm on a ride. You're toxic and slipping up, oh.
They all shows that you flirt with the shadow lady.
You sure? God damn it. Listen, she's pretty. Okay? She's pretty. Pretty woman. Of course, there's always frame rate drops when you, like, play photographer. With the taste on lips, I'm on the ride. Okay.
Pretty women walking down the street, pretty women.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty woman walking down the street, pretty woman. Fuck. I actually don't know the lyrics for that song. Even though I've heard it multiple times, because I live in a house that, like, likes that kind of shit. Okay. Yeah, it's been a while since I played photographer. Ugh. I used to have my timing and everything down pat. Where, like, even when I'm distracted by streams, I can still play photographer decently. I can't do that anymore. It's gonna be a while. Pretty woman. Yep, nope, they're gone. They gone, bitch. Alright. Oh, gosh. Here, I'm just gonna surrender. No, birds, it is not time to eat. It's too early for you guys. Here, let's try getting one of the furniture pieces. And there goes Norton. They know what time of day it is, but it's a little too early. Here, let me turn off the lights. That'll settle him down for a little
Laura
bit.
Killamena quits.
I've quit before. Not often on stream because I'm busy streaming, but off stream, yeah, I've quit before. it's no, for me, it's like, it's no point. It's no, there's just no point for me to, like, have the match just keep going on if I can't find the last survivor and, like, I've basically lost already and know that I can't catch up with that last one. Usually it's with characters I'm not that great with. I don't do it often with my mains, but it happens. Or like with characters like Photographer, where I haven't played them in forever, I'll be like, yeah, I'm just gonna quit. The match is super long already because it's Photographer. Simply put, I've played this game for like so long that it's like, if I don't feel like wasting my time, I'm not gonna waste my time. They can have it. Chat versus chicken, yep. They're making all sorts of noises right now. Pew 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 pew. Boop, 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 boop. There we go, that works for me. There we go, got that. Gonna go over here. How was the rain? The rain wasn't that bad. The thing is, I wasn't in the at-risk zone, so it was just like slightly heavier rain. Basically, I had a pretty good idea that I wasn't going to be at risk. But I wanted to hold off till, like, I knew for certain. On the other side where the Gulf is, and the Yeah. Basically, the at-risk areas was anything that was within the desert and alongside basically anything roughly vertical to San Diego. Los Angeles did get affected, but it wasn't like later on until the storm. Ma'am, what are you doing? Where the I honestly fucking hate that as a Hellember is when it lags out and does that. Like, that needs to be fixed. But yeah, outside of the zone, pretty much everywhere else in California either wasn't affected too much, or it was just raining or humid, and smelled like gym socks. We ended up getting earthquakes as usual, though. Hey, little bird. One of the birds is on my chair. I'm gonna play some Hermit. Playing some Hermit. That's what we'll do right now. No, I want to play some Hermit. Oh, okay. There we go. Insulin spilled, got it. That's why you live on land? Fair. I mean, like, I live here because I have no choice. I just happen to live here. I woke up one day and it was like, well, this is where you live for... That's fucking... for the majority of your existence now. Unless you move, but... otherwise, this is where you live. Yeah, little bird? You have a lot to say, don't you? I don't know if you guys can hear it, but you're chirping. Who's a talkative little baby? God damn it, batter! Oh, that's right. I changed the hotkey. Oh no, they're congregating onto my table. They're here.
We can.
I'm talking about the chickens. They're congregating. The flock of babies. Of adorable menaces to society. Piss off. Where are you? There we go. Caught you. I like... fucked up my controls a little. Like, I have a different hotkey set for Hermit. And for whatever reason, I didn't make the same button I use for Blink for all other characters the same one for him. So it's a different button. And I always want to press that button to blink, and then I forget, oh wait, this is the wrong character. Luckily, he has a long reach, so we can kind of make up for it. Fuck you. Fuck you, physics. Fuck physics. Am I right? Yeah, that's right. Stay down. Fuck physics. Fuck a physics. Physics. What a load of sham. Hate physics. Utter bullshit it is. Gotta aim, SMH. Oh no. Can't believe I gotta aim this bullshit. Piss off! Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh no, whatever can I fucking do except this? My lord. That would be terrible. Alright, time to teleport! Wait. Time to teleport! We teleported! Piss off! Where are you? I want you to piss off as well! Where the fuck are you? There you are! Piss off! Come here! God damn it! Fucking hell! You, come here! My student! I'm sending you to jail again. That's right! You fucking got it! Wait. Wrong polarity! I know my science! Fuck off! Woman! Put you here! Yeah, that's right. Scram! I'll give you an F later.
Mm.
Alright, let's do this. Alright, let's go. Let's do the thing. Let's do the thing. Alright. Okay, so we got that. So let's go. Where's to? Ha! I see you. You will not leave my sight. You will squander in your position. You will English words. You will English words. That's what I will do. You will English words to me. I don't even fucking know what that means. Hey, you want to know a random science fact? I'm gonna beat your ass. That's what it is. God damn it. I will beat your ass eventually. That is a science fact. See? See? It's fact because it's not a theory. Alright, let's get you again. God damn it, why did I make the fucking blink button the wrong damn button? I want to cry. You don't see it because you can't see my hand, but quite frankly, it's pain. Yeah, that's right. Get over here. Success. Listen, I haven't shared anyone yet, but it will happen. Just give it a moment. Hello. I just want to let you know, Subway called.
Some with so many excuses.
God damn it. Hey, Eli, I just want to know, Subway called. I just want to let you know, Subway called. Yeah, that's right. They wanted to give you your sandwich. It involved a fist. Glad I was able to finish up that joke.
And you took too long with the joke. You should have just went with Pop Down.
God damn it. I know. But hey, at least I had fun. Alright, so let's see. Why not? I won't get far, but why not?
Hashtag cringe.
I am cringe, I am free. Remember, that is the motto of this channel. One of the mottos of this channel. I am cringe, I am free. You cannot contain me. I do the fuck I please. Politely. By the way, fun fact, I managed to expose someone to Lucino propaganda. I was like, hey, we were like talking about hot characters, like attractive fictional characters. God damn it, cowboy. And I was like, hey, here's Lucino. And I show them both forms of Lucino, and they're like, I will now subscribe to Lucino propaganda. And I'm like, as you should. As you should. Child, why so small? Why so loud? Why you beep beep? Why you beep beep? Beep beep so much? Beep beep so much for something so small. Fuck. Oh fuck. And really? Really? No. Like, I get it, but also at the same time, can we just not have the ceilings apply to Lucino in some cases? Please and thank you. You pew pew. You pew pew. Pew pew. God damn it. There we go. Gotta hit, folks. There we go. For anyone new to this channel or just coming to the stream, if you hear the peep beep, pio pio, cheep cheeps, I have baby chicks with me. And they're insistent on being around me right now, so they're like, I will be around Peepaw. I shall surround myself. I shall now surround Peepaw Sam. I'm not too focused on winning this match. I just want to, like, practice more, of his ability, really. Because Lucino is hard to control. So, I want to get better at controlling him. go. Works for me. Hey, don't eat that. Child. Small, loud, and mighty. And an absolute adorable terror. Why? Don't eat that. No, that's bad. Yeah, go down. Go over there. How about you stay on my shoulder? Is that enough of a compromise? Yeah? Yeah? That's right. Hey, hey. No. You know what? Go down here. Be on the ground. Be a chicken. Be a chicken. I swear they're like toddlers. They want to get into everything. Oh no, they're back. The baby chicks are back. Hi. Will you not get into shit you shouldn't get into this time? Probably. You probably will. You're just babies. But they're choosing my shoulder right now and messing with my hair. And doing their purring. Alright, I see where you are now. Ma'am, I must apprehend you. Come here. I must apprehend you while birds go through my hair. It's very awkward. I don't suggest this sort of apprehension. What the fuck? Not at that, but at the birds. It's a very weird feeling. You know what? Now that they've changed... They've changed how the web works. I might create a build just for Lucino, because there's now something that's kind of relevant to him. Luca, did you know there's a not a prisoner. There Luca, did you know there's a Luca in my hair? There's a bird in my hair. Where'd you go? I can't remember why I don't have a... I thought I had a detention belt on him. I guess I don't. I will have to check what build I have on him. I thought I had, I thought I carried detention. Me trying to play this match while being very distracted right now. It's not easy. Hello, sir. You like playing Ring Around Rosie? Yeah, about that. Oh, that's why. I thought the match was... I was like, oh, I thought the gates were open. This is how distracted I am right now. When you have birds in your hair, you're just like, fuck. I'm not really interested in Priestess right now. Okay, got through Luca. Alright, so let's see here. If I can send a patroller out to that location. Just to keep them a wee bit busy. That'll buy me some time. Come on. Come on, come on. Fuck. God damn it. If they increased his range, it will be a bit easier. Like, it would be a nice compromise for the still difficult camera control. Where's Fiona? Shrek. Donkey. Where's Fiona? Ah! My eye! Picked my eye! You little shit. It's okay, I've had my eye pecked like multiple times. It's fine. I'm alright. I've actually had my eye stabbed before by accident. Let's see. I haven't played X-Boy in a while either. I used to play as him. I used to play this character decently. You? Focus on Embalmer though. I'll take it. Got you. Please do not pick my mouth. Keeps taking down my fucking trees. N. There we go. Why is the N key so far? I should fix that. Go, got you. Miss. No, get off my desk. Yep, it's the morning. It's definitely the morning. Piss off. Okay, got them. What now? Bye. Get away from my trees. I'm the Lorax. Speak for the trees, you don't. This will probably be the last match for this stream. I might stream later though, but since it's the morning, my roosters clearly want to get up and get going, and I got work in an hour and 30 minutes. So yeah, I will conclude it here. But I hope you guys actually like this surprise stream, you know. I definitely, like, I've always said this, but I always wanted to stream more in the morning these days. So I did like doing this stream, and I look forward to doing more streams like this if I find the motivation to get up and do them in the morning. So with that said, I'm gonna end the stream here for now because everyone is waking up and is like, oh my god, feed me, I'm a bird, and all that good stuff. So see y'all later, alright? Bye-bye. Thank you, Norton. Bye-bye.